On a distant planet, far from Earth, there lived an alien girl named Zora. She was part of a peaceful species who had spent generations studying the vast galaxies. Zora had traveled across many worlds, learning about different creatures and civilizations. But nothing she had seen could have prepared her for what she was about to witness. It was a bright, strange day when Zora first saw the human. She had been watching the landscape of the planet from a distance when she noticed a small group of Earth explorers arriving. They seemed out of place on this wild, untamed world. Zora had read about humans, how they were known for their intelligence and courage, but she had never seen one before. She was curious, but she kept her distance, knowing that humans could be unpredictable. Among the group was a man named Captain Blake. He stood out from the others, not just because of his calm demeanor, but because he carried an aura of confidence that Zora found fascinating. Most of the humans she had read about were cautious in the face of danger, but Blake was different. He moved through the dense jungle with ease, as though he had done it 1,000 times before. Zora decided to follow them from afar, hidden among the thick trees and vines. She watched as Blake led his team toward the heart of the jungle. The air was thick with humidity, and the sounds of strange creatures echoed through the trees. The deeper they went, the more dangerous the planet became. Zora knew of the many beasts that roamed the land, huge, deadly creatures that would attack anything that entered their territory. It was a place of constant danger, where only the strongest survived. After hours of walking, Blake and his team came across a clearing. At the center of it stood a creature Zora had heard of but never seen, the thorn beast. It was the largest predator on the planet, its body covered in thick scales, and its 6 long legs gave it the speed to chase down anything that crossed its path. Its eyes glowed a menacing red as it snarled at the intruders. Zora felt a chill run down her spine. The thorn beast was a living nightmare, and no one had ever survived an encounter with it. But to her surprise, Captain Blake did not panic. Most humans would have turned and run, but not Blake. Instead of retreating, he stood tall, facing the thorn beast with a calm expression. Zora could hardly believe what she was seeing. This human, who was so different from the others, didn't show fear. He didn't even hesitate. It was as if he had dealt with creatures like this before. Zora had heard of humans being brave, but this was something else. This was pure confidence. As the thorn beast let out a deafening roar, Blake remained motionless, studying the creature carefully. Zora's heart raced. What was he planning? Was he going to fight it? She had seen many warriors try to battle the beast, and none had ever returned. What could a human do that others couldn't? The thorn beast lunged forward with terrifying speed, its sharp teeth bared. But Blake didn't flinch. Instead, he took a slow step forward, extending his hand toward the creature. Zora thought she had lost her mind. Why is he getting so close? She wondered, her mind racing. She had heard that the thorn beast was unpredictable, dangerous. One wrong move, and Blake would be torn apart. But Blake moved with purpose, as though he knew exactly what to do. His voice was calm, almost soothing, as he spoke softly to the beast, not in a language Zora could understand, but in a way that made the creature hesitate. For a moment, the thorn beast seemed confused, its glowing eyes locking onto Blake's. It paused, studying the human before it. Zora watched in awe, feeling a sense of disbelief. This human was not afraid, and for the first time, Zora began to wonder if there was more to humans than just their strength. Could it be that they understood something deeper? She thought. The beast snorted, its hot breath steaming in the air, but it didn't attack. It was as if the creature was evaluating Blake. For a few long seconds, there was nothing but silence. Zora could hardly breathe, the tension thick in the air. She had never seen anything like this before. Was it possible that Blake could actually tame such a terrifying beast? No one had ever succeeded. Yet here he was, standing face to face with the creature, showing no fear, only determination. Then, in a move that left Zora gasping in disbelief, Blake slowly reached out and touched the thorn beast's massive head. The creature's eyes widened as it felt the human's touch. It seemed to calm, lowering its head in a way that Zora had never seen before. The thorn beast, usually wild and unpredictable, was now still, its body relaxing under Blake's hand. Zora could hardly believe her eyes. The human had done the impossible. He had tamed the most dangerous predator on the planet. She stood frozen, wondering if she was witnessing a miracle, or if this human was far more capable than she had ever imagined. Whatever it was, she knew one thing for sure. Blake was no ordinary human, and this encounter would change everything she thought she knew about them. The following day, Blake and Zora ventured deeper into the dense jungle, away from the clearing where the thorn beast had first appeared. Zora walked behind Blake, her eyes still filled with disbelief. How had he done it? How had he managed to tame the planet's most dangerous creature? The creature now walked alongside them, its large form moving with a strange calmness that Zora could hardly comprehend. She had never seen anything like it before. The thorn beast, once a symbol of death and terror, was now obedient to Blake's every movement. Zora had grown up on this planet. She knew its dangers better than anyone. She had studied the creatures, understood their behaviors, and learned to avoid the deadliest of them. But never in her life had she witnessed such an extraordinary event. Blake's actions were beyond anything she could explain. She had always believed that the thorn beast was untamable, a force of nature that could not be controlled. Yet here it was, walking beside them, responding to Blake's every gesture as though it were a trained companion. As they walked, Blake explained that his people had learned to understand and respect the creatures of the world. They didn't seek to conquer or destroy them like other invaders had tried to do. Instead, they focused on understanding the creatures' instincts, their fears, and their needs. Blake spoke about how humans had a unique ability to adapt to new environments, using their minds and empathy to create bonds with even the most dangerous species. He told Zora that his mission on this planet was not just to explore, but to protect it, something Zora had not expected from a human. Zora listened carefully, trying to understand his words. The more Blake spoke, the more she found herself doubting her previous beliefs about humans. She had always seen them as reckless, driven only by their desire to conquer. Yet here was a human who spoke of harmony with nature, someone who valued life rather than simply taking it. Zora couldn't help but wonder how much of what she had been taught about humans was true. Humans are different from what you might think, Blake said, noticing the thoughtful expression on Zora's face. We don't conquer worlds. We adapt. We learn. And sometimes, we even learn from the creatures we once feared. Zora couldn't help but ask, but how? How can you understand them? I've seen many humans come to this planet, and they all either tried to kill the creatures or run away. What makes you so different? Blake smiled. It's not just about strength or fear. It's about respect. Understanding that every creature, no matter how terrifying, has its own purpose in the world. It's about learning how to communicate, even when you don't share the same language. Zora was silent for a moment. She had never thought of it that way. The creatures on this planet were not just obstacles to avoid. They were part of the planet's balance. And perhaps just maybe, Blake's approach was the right one. The more she watched him, the more she began to see the difference between him and the others who had come before. As they moved forward, Zora glanced back at the thorn beast. It had stopped for a moment to sniff the air, but didn't wander off. It was content, almost as though it had accepted Blake's presence. Zora wondered what had changed in the beast. The thorn beast was a symbol of fear to her people, a creature that had once caused entire villages to flee. But now, under Blake's influence, it seemed almost tame. Zora couldn't explain it. They soon reached a clearing, and Blake paused. He turned to Zora, a serious expression on his face. This is just the beginning. The thorn beast is just one of many dangers here. There's more to this planet than you realize, Zora. More than just predators. There's a deeper threat, something much worse than the beasts that roam these jungles. Zora raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? Blake glanced around, his eyes scanning the trees as if searching for something hidden. There's an invasion coming. Not from this planet, but from another. A force that doesn't care about the creatures or the planet's balance. They'll destroy everything in their path to claim this world for themselves. Zora felt a cold shiver run down her spine. An invasion? She had never heard of such a thing. The thought of outsiders coming to her planet, willing to destroy everything in their way, made her heart race. She had spent her life protecting this world and its creatures. The idea of it all being destroyed by an alien force was unthinkable. Why didn't you tell me this before? Zora asked, her voice trembling slightly. Blake looked at her, his expression softening. Because I didn't want to scare you. But now, we need to be ready. The Thorn Beast is just the beginning of what we need to do to protect this world. Zora was silent for a moment, processing what Blake had said. She had thought that humans were just here to explore. But now, she understood. Blake wasn't just a curious traveler. He was a protector. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized that he might be the only hope this planet had. She had always believed that humans were just invaders, but Blake was proving her wrong. His mission wasn't to destroy. It was to save. Okay, she said quietly. I'll help you. But I need to know more. I need to understand everything if we're going to stop this invasion. Blake nodded. We'll make sure you understand, Zora. Together, we'll protect this world. But we need to start preparing now. As Zora looked at Blake, she felt something she hadn't expected. Trust. She had never trusted a human before, but now, for the first time, she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could be allies. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but Zora knew that with Blake by her side, they might just stand a chance. As Blake and Zora journeyed deeper into the dense alien jungle, Zora's mind raced with the many questions she had. The Thorn Beast walked beside them, its large, powerful form moving silently through the underbrush. Zora had never imagined that she would see the creature in such a calm state, especially after everything she had learned about its violent nature. But the way Blake interacted with it, the way he spoke to it and made it follow his commands, was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was as though Blake shared a deep, unspoken understanding with the beast. Zora could no longer deny that Blake was different from the humans she had encountered in the past. The others had been reckless, hunting the creatures of the planet without thought for their role in the ecosystem. But Blake was different. He treated the Thorn Beast with respect, as if it were an equal, and he had tamed it with patience and understanding rather than force. As they walked through the jungle, Blake continued to explain his methods to Zora. He talked about how humans had developed unique techniques to communicate with creatures, not by speaking their language, but by observing their behavior and understanding their instincts. Every creature has its own way of seeing the world, Blake said. If you can learn to understand them, to see the world through their eyes, you can form a connection. It's not about controlling them, it's about working with them. Zora was still skeptical, but she couldn't deny that Blake's approach was working. The Thorn Beast, once a creature of terror, was now walking by their side, its large head lowered in what seemed to be a sign of trust. Zora found it hard to believe that this was the same beast that had once caused so much fear among her people. As they traveled deeper into the jungle, Zora became more and more impressed by Blake's ability to read the creature's movements. He seemed to know exactly when the Thorn Beast was about to grow agitated and would calm it with just a few words or a simple gesture. It wasn't just about controlling the beast, it was about creating a bond. Blake didn't treat the Thorn Beast as a tool to be used or a danger to be avoided. He treated it as a partner, something Zora had never thought was possible. After several hours of walking, they came upon a clearing. The ground was damp and the air thick with humidity. Blake stopped and turned to Zora. "This is where we'll begin," he said. "Taming a creature is only part of what we need to do. Now, we need to understand the planet itself." Zora was confused. What do you mean? Isn't the thorn beast enough? Isn't that the most dangerous creature here? Blake shook his head. The thorn beast may be dangerous, but it's not the only threat this planet faces. There are forces at work here that go beyond just the creatures. I need to teach you how to survive in this world, not just with the beasts, but with the planet itself. This is a living, breathing world, Zora. Everything is connected. If we're going to stop the invasion, we need to understand the planet as a whole. Zora frowned, trying to grasp what he was saying. She had spent her entire life studying this planet, but Blake was talking about something deeper, something more than just the creatures. It was as if he was speaking of an energy that tied everything together. She had heard rumors of an ancient force that governed the planet, but she had never fully believed them. Blake, however, seemed to be hinting at something much bigger. "How do we begin?" she asked. Blake smiled, his eyes sparkling with determination. "First, we need to get to know the land. This jungle, these mountains, the oceans, all of it is alive in its own way. The thorn beast is just one part of it. The creatures here respond to the land itself, and the land responds to them. If we understand that connection, we'll be able to use it to our advantage. But it's going to take time. We need to be patient." Zora nodded, although part of her still found it hard to believe. How could she, a member of a species that had always viewed nature as something to be feared or conquered, learn to see the world in such a different way? But as she looked at Blake, she saw a man who had a quiet confidence, someone who had learned to live with the world around him rather than try to control it. Blake led Zora through the clearing, and as they walked, he pointed out different plants and animals, explaining how each played a role in the ecosystem. Zora began to realize that the planet was far more complex than she had ever imagined. Every creature, every plant, was part of a larger system, and it was this system that Blake was trying to understand. Suddenly, the thorn beast stopped, its ears twitching as it looked around. Zora froze. Something was wrong. The creature's calm demeanor had changed, and now it was alert, its eyes scanning the trees. Zora followed its gaze and saw something moving in the shadows. It was too fast to identify, but it was coming closer. Blake motioned for Zora to stay quiet. The thorn beast growled low in its throat, ready to defend them if necessary. Blake slowly crouched down, his eyes never leaving the shadows. Zora could feel her heart race as the sounds grew louder. Whatever was out there was coming fast, and the thorn beast seemed prepared to face it. Blake's calm voice cut through the tension. "Stay close to me," he whispered, "and trust the thorn beast." Zora nodded, her mind racing. What was this new threat? Was it another predator? She had no idea, but one thing was clear: Blake wasn't worried. He trusted the thorn beast, and that trust was starting to make her believe that maybe, just maybe, humans had a deeper understanding of this planet than she had ever known. The rustling in the trees grew louder, and Zora's grip on her weapon tightened. The jungle had always been a dangerous place, but with Blake and the thorn beast by her side, she was beginning to feel a strange sense of hope. Whatever was coming, she wasn't facing it alone. The shadows in the jungle seemed to stretch and twist as the sounds grew louder, echoing through the dense undergrowth. Zora's heart beat faster as the rustling drew closer, but Blake's calm demeanor remained unshaken. He motioned for her to stay still, his eyes focused on the movement in the trees. The thorn beast, usually a creature of great fury, was eerily quiet now, its muscles tense as it lowered its body, ready to pounce at a moment's notice. Zora felt the tension in the air, thick and almost suffocating. She had faced countless dangers in her life, but this was different. She didn't know what was coming, and that uncertainty gnawed at her. Blake, however, seemed completely at ease. His calmness, his quiet confidence, was contagious. Zora took a deep breath, trying to match his composure as she crouched beside him. The movement in the shadows stopped. For a moment, there was complete silence. Zora strained her ears, but the jungle seemed to hold its breath. The thorn beast growled softly, its gaze never leaving the trees. Whatever was out there was still lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. Blake raised his hand, signaling for Zora to be quiet. Slowly, he moved to the side, positioning himself so that he was between the creature and Zora, a protective stance. Zora followed his lead, her heart pounding in her chest. She could barely see anything in the thick, tangled foliage. The shadows seemed to blend with the trees, making it impossible to determine where the threat was coming from. Then, without warning, the creature appeared. It was unlike anything Zora had ever seen. The creature's body was sleek and long, covered in dark, chitinous armor that shimmered like polished metal. Its legs were long and spindly, moving with a fluid grace as it stepped into the clearing. It had multiple eyes, each one glowing faintly in the dim light, and a long, sharp tail that flicked behind it like a whip. The creature's movement was quick and deliberate, its gaze flickering between Blake and the thorn beast. Zora instinctively reached for her weapon, but Blake stopped her with a subtle shake of his head. His eyes were focused on the creature, studying its every movement. Zora could feel the tension rising again, but Blake remained calm. The thorn beast, still by their side, seemed to sense that the new creature was not a direct threat, at least not yet. The strange creature stopped several paces away, its many eyes fixed on Blake. It studied him for a long moment, as if assessing whether he was a threat. Zora's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen a creature like this. It wasn't one of the planet's predators, and yet it was just as dangerous. Zora knew that any wrong move could send it into attack mode. Blake spoke softly, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried through the jungle. "You don't want to fight. Neither of us does." Zora stared at him. Was he speaking to it? How was he so calm with such a terrifying creature so close? Her mind raced, trying to understand Blake's logic. He had tamed the thorn beast, and now it seemed he was trying to do the same with this new creature. She didn't know if she could believe it, but the way Blake moved and spoke, it was as if he understood this alien life form, as if he knew its thoughts. The creature hissed, a low, dangerous sound that vibrated in the air. Zora's fingers tightened around her weapon again, but Blake shook his head, warning her to stay still. The thorn beast growled softly, its body tense but waiting for Blake's command. Blake lowered himself slowly, one hand extended toward the creature. Zora felt her breath catch. Was this human truly unafraid? He had faced the thorn beast, and now he was trying to form a bond with this new, unknown predator. Zora had never seen anything like it. She had learned to avoid these creatures, to fear them, but Blake was showing her something entirely different. He wasn't trying to fight or dominate. He was attempting to communicate, to connect with the creatures of the planet. The creature took a cautious step forward, its many eyes blinking in unison. It sniffed the air, its long, sharp tail flicking behind it. Zora held her breath as the creature neared Blake's hand. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Was it possible that Blake could tame another predator, just like he had done with the thorn beast? Could he really bridge the gap between humans and the creatures of this planet? Blake's voice was steady as he spoke again. "You're not a monster. You're just trying to survive, like the rest of us. I'm not here to hurt you." The creature's tail flicked one last time before it stopped, its many eyes focusing on Blake. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, in an unexpected move, the creature lowered its head, its large, glowing eyes studying Blake with what almost seemed like curiosity. Zora felt her pulse race. This was unheard of. The creature was not attacking. It was listening, responding to Blake's words and actions. Slowly, Blake's hand moved closer to the creature, and the thorn beast stood still beside them, watching the interaction with a strange sense of calm. The creature hesitated then. Just as cautiously, it extended one of its long, spindly limbs toward Blake. Zora's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen anything like this in all her years on the planet. Blake wasn't just surviving here. He was finding a way to coexist with the creatures. Blake gently touched the creature's limb, his movements slow and deliberate. The creature didn't flinch, but instead, it seemed to relax, its posture softening. Zora couldn't believe her eyes. In that moment, something changed. It was as if Blake had unlocked some secret of this world, a secret that allowed him to communicate with its most dangerous inhabitants. The creature made a low, rumbling sound, almost like a purr. Blake smiled, his eyes filled with satisfaction. "See," he said softly, looking at Zora. "It's not about fighting or conquering. It's about understanding." Zora stood still, taking in the moment. She had spent her whole life thinking of the creatures of this planet as threats to be feared or avoided. But Blake had shown her a different way, a way to live with them, to understand them. And as the creature slowly backed away, retreating into the shadows, Zora realized that Blake had just done the impossible once again. He had not only tamed a beast, he had bridged the gap between two species, showing her that perhaps, just perhaps, humans were capable of more than she had ever imagined. The jungle was eerily quiet after the creature had retreated into the shadows, its form blending with the darkness. Zora stood frozen, her mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. She had witnessed Blake tame not one, but two of the most dangerous creatures on the planet, and she was left in awe of his skill, his patience, and his ability to communicate with beings that everyone else would have considered untamable. Her heart still raced from the encounter, but now, there was a sense of wonder growing inside her. Could it be that Blake's methods could save the planet? Blake turned to her, a smile of quiet satisfaction on his face. "That's the key, Zora," he said softly. "It's not about dominating these creatures or forcing them into submission. It's about respect, understanding their language, their instincts. Once you do that, you can start to work with them, rather than against them." Zora felt a strange mix of admiration and disbelief. She had grown up in a world where the most powerful creatures were treated as threats to be neutralized. The idea of living in harmony with them was foreign to her, but Blake's calm presence and his ability to control the situation made her think there might be something more to it. "How did you do it?" Zora asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How did you know the creature wouldn't attack you?" Blake's smile widened as he stepped closer to her. "It's all about understanding. I've spent years studying creatures, observing how they react, how they communicate. You can see in their eyes when they're ready to fight, and you can see when they're curious or confused. That's when you make your move, but it takes time, patience, and a lot of listening." Zora nodded slowly. She had spent her life avoiding creatures, running from them whenever possible. But Blake had done the opposite. He had learned to understand them, and in doing so, he had earned their trust. It was a perspective she had never considered. As they continued their journey through the jungle, Blake kept talking about his experiences with the creatures of other planets. "The key is empathy," he explained. "I've met creatures that are even more dangerous than the thorn beast, but by learning about them, by seeing things from their perspective, I've been able to make a connection. And once that connection is made, they're no longer enemies, they're allies." Zora was still processing everything Blake had said. It was a hard concept to grasp, but she couldn't deny that it seemed to work. The thorn beast, once a creature of terror, was now walking beside them like a loyal companion. And the creature from earlier, Zora couldn't shake the image of it, how it had backed away peacefully after Blake's quiet intervention. She had never imagined that such a thing was possible. Could this really be the way forward for her planet? As the day wore on, they came across another clearing. This one was smaller, with a narrow stream running through it. Blake stopped at the edge of the stream and crouched down, gazing into the water. Zora followed his lead, her curiosity piqued. Blake turned to her with a serious look in his eyes. "Zora," he said quietly, "the invasion I mentioned earlier, it's not just about fighting creatures. It's about understanding the forces that want to control this planet. They won't just attack the beasts. They'll destroy everything they see as an obstacle. That includes the planet's natural balance." Zora felt a chill run through her at the mention of the invasion. She had never considered that there could be a force so powerful, so intent on destroying everything in its path. So what do we do? How do we stop them? Blake looked back at the stream, his expression hardening. We start by protecting the balance. We need to form alliances with the creatures here, not just the thorn beast and that other creature, but every living thing. They are the planet's true guardians. If we can unite them, we can defend this world. But we have to move quickly. The invaders are coming, and they'll stop at nothing to take this planet for themselves. Zora's mind raced as she processed his words. She had always seen the creatures as a threat, but Blake was showing her that they could be the key to saving her world. She had spent her life trying to protect the planet, but in all her years, she had never thought of the creatures as potential allies. Blake was changing everything she thought she knew. "We can't do this alone," Zora said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "We need to rally the creatures, all of them. If we can form an alliance, maybe we can stand a chance against the invaders." Blake nodded. "Exactly. We need to prove to the creatures that we're not here to conquer them, but to help protect the world. If we gain their trust, they'll fight alongside us. But it won't be easy. There are many dangers we'll have to face, both from the invaders and from the creatures themselves." Zora looked at Blake, her resolve hardening. She had always believed that her people could protect the planet alone. But now, she saw that it was going to take more than just human strength. It was going to take the combined power of both humans and the planet's creatures to stop the invasion. Blake stood and looked around the clearing, as if sensing the weight of what was ahead. "We'll need to travel far, Zora, to places no one has ever dared go. There are creatures in this world that even I haven't encountered yet, but together, we'll find a way to unite them." Zora nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Let's do it. Let's save this world." As they made their way deeper into the jungle, Zora couldn't help but feel a new sense of purpose growing inside her. Blake had opened her eyes to a new way of thinking, one where cooperation with the creatures, rather than fear or domination, could be the key to survival. And as the thorn beast moved alongside them, Zora knew that the journey ahead would be dangerous. But for the first time in a long while, she believed they might just succeed. Together. The journey had taken them deeper into the heart of the jungle than Zora had ever imagined. Each step seemed to draw them closer to a world she had once feared. But now, with Blake by her side and the thorn beast at their heels, she was beginning to understand the true nature of this planet. It wasn't just a place of danger and fear. It was a place of life, of balance, of harmony between creatures and the land. And Blake was showing her how to see it all, how to become part of it. Blake led the way, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings, his movements calm and assured. Zora followed closely, her thoughts still racing from everything they had experienced. She couldn't help but marvel at how easily Blake had bonded with the planet's creatures, how he had tamed the thorn beast, and how he was now working with even the most dangerous of beings. It was something Zora had never thought possible. She had been taught to fear these creatures, to see them as obstacles to be overcome. But Blake had shown her a different way. They weren't enemies to be fought. They were allies waiting to be understood. As they traveled, the jungle seemed to change. The dense foliage gave way to towering trees with twisting vines, their branches thick with leaves that seemed to hum with an ancient energy. The air grew heavy with the scent of exotic flowers and the sounds of unseen creatures. It was a place where life thrived in every corner, a place that felt alive in a way Zora had never experienced before. The thorn beast walked silently beside them, its massive form moving with a grace that belied its size. Zora had seen it in its full, terrifying glory, its claws and teeth capable of ripping apart anything that crossed its path. But now, it was different. It walked with them, a silent guardian, its loyalty unquestioned. Zora had to admit that Blake had done the impossible. He had changed this creature, and in doing so, he had changed her understanding of what was possible. Blake's voice cut through the silence, drawing Zora out of her thoughts. "We're getting close," he said. "There's a place up ahead where the creatures are different. More ancient. We need to be careful. The balance here is delicate." Zora nodded, her heart quickening at the thought of what lay ahead. She had no idea what Blake meant by ancient creatures, but she could sense the shift in the air. Something was different. She felt it in her bones, a quiet tension that seemed to grow with every step. As they approached a narrow canyon, the jungle opened up to reveal a breathtaking sight. The walls of the canyon were covered in strange, glowing symbols, their meaning unknown but their presence undeniably powerful. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with energy, and Zora could feel a hum in the air, like the very earth itself was alive. "This is it," Blake said softly, his voice filled with reverence. "The heart of the jungle. The creatures here are not like the ones we've encountered before. These are the oldest beings on the planet. They were here long before us, and they will be here long after we're gone." Zora felt a shiver run down her spine. The air was thick with mystery, and the unknown creatures lurking in the depths of the canyon seemed to stir something primal inside her. She had always been taught to approach the wild with caution, to respect the danger, but now she felt something more. These creatures were part of the planet's soul, and understanding them was the key to unlocking the future. Blake's eyes were focused on the canyon, a look of quiet determination on his face. "This is where we'll find the true power of the planet. If we can connect with these creatures, we can protect the balance. But we have to be careful. Not all creatures here are as forgiving as the thorn beast." Zora's mind raced. What did Blake mean by forgiving? Were there creatures even more dangerous than the thorn beast? She had seen firsthand how fearsome that creature could be, but Blake had tamed it with ease. What could be so dangerous that even he was wary of it? Before she could ask, the thorn beast growled low in its throat, its large eyes scanning the canyon ahead. Blake held up a hand, signaling for silence. They waited, listening to the stillness around them. The jungle seemed to hold its breath, as if something was approaching. And then they heard it. A sound like the beating of wings, distant at first, but growing louder with each passing second. Zora's pulse quickened as she turned to Blake, her eyes wide with alarm. "What is that?" she whispered. Blake's expression hardened, and he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay close," he said. "And remember what I taught you. Don't fear the creatures. Understand them." Zora nodded, her heart racing. She had seen how Blake handled the thorn beast, but she had no idea how they were going to face whatever was coming now. The sound grew louder, closer. And then, emerging from the shadows of the canyon, came the creature. It was massive, its wings unfurling like the sails of a ship, casting a shadow over the canyon floor. The creature's body was covered in shimmering scales that reflected the light, its sharp talons scraping the stone as it landed with a soft thud. Its eyes were like burning orbs, glowing with a fiery intensity. It was unlike anything Zora had ever seen, elegant and terrifying at the same time. Blake stood tall, his hand resting on the thorn beast's back. "This is it," he said quietly. "The creature of the canyon, one of the oldest beings on the planet." Zora's breath caught in her throat. The creature's presence was overwhelming, its power undeniable. She had never felt so small, so insignificant. The air around them seemed to crackle with energy, and Zora realized that this was no ordinary creature. This was a being of legend, one that held the key to the planet's ancient power. Blake turned to her, his voice steady. "Remember, Zora, it's not about fighting. It's about understanding. Let me do the talking." Zora could only nod, her mind spinning as she watched Blake approach the creature, his every movement calm and deliberate. She had no idea what was going to happen next, but she knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning of something far greater than she had ever imagined. Blake stepped forward with confidence, the thorn beast by his side, its massive body tense but unwavering. The air between them and the enormous creature shimmered with an energy that made Zora's skin prickle. The canyon seemed alive with an ancient power, the glowing symbols on the walls pulsing in time with the creature's steady breaths. Zora watched, her heart pounding in her chest, as Blake approached the beast without hesitation. The creature's eyes burned with a fiery intensity, but there was something in its gaze, something that reminded Zora of the way Blake looked at the thorn beast. Was it curiosity? Recognition? She wasn't sure, but it was clear that the creature was not immediately hostile. It observed Blake with the kind of careful interest that only a being of ancient wisdom could possess. Blake raised his hand slowly, his eyes locked with the creature's. "I'm not here to harm you," he said softly, his voice steady and calm. "I'm here to protect this world, just like you are." Zora couldn't believe her ears. He was speaking to the creature as though it understood him, as if he and the beast were communicating on some deeper level. She had seen Blake tame the thorn beast, but this was different. This was something much older, much more powerful, and yet Blake was treating it with the same respect he had shown to every other creature. For a moment, there was no sound except the distant hum of the jungle. Then, slowly, the creature moved. It unfurled its massive wings, and the air seemed to vibrate with its movement. Zora felt her breath catch in her throat, her mind racing. What was it going to do? Was it going to attack? Or was it listening to Blake? The creature's wings hovered in the air for a moment before they slowly folded back against its body. It lowered its head, its glowing eyes never leaving Blake. Zora couldn't believe it. This powerful ancient being was responding to Blake, not with violence, but with understanding. Blake took another step forward, his voice barely a whisper. "I know you've been watching over this land for centuries, but there's a new threat, one that's coming for everything, for this balance you've kept for so long. I need your help to protect it." The creature's eyes flickered, almost as if it were considering Blake's words. Zora stood frozen, unsure of what to do. She had always believed that these creatures were beyond reach, that they existed in a world apart from her own. But Blake had shown her otherwise. He had bridged the gap between humanity and the planet's creatures, and now, it seemed, he was asking the oldest and most powerful of them all to join their cause. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. The creature stood motionless, its eyes glowing brighter as it studied Blake. Zora felt as though the entire canyon was holding its breath, waiting for some kind of signal. And then, finally, the creature made a sound, a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the air. But it wasn't a threatening growl. It was a sound of recognition, of understanding. Blake smiled, his eyes alight with relief. "It's not rejecting us," Blake said, his voice filled with awe. "It's agreeing. We have its trust." Zora's heart soared as she realized what had just happened. The creature had accepted Blake, just as the thorn beast had. This ancient guardian of the jungle, the creature that had been untouched by time, was now an ally in their fight to save the planet. Zora had never imagined that such a thing was possible. She had thought that these creatures were beyond reach, beyond understanding. But Blake had proved her wrong. The creature stepped closer, its massive form looming over them. Zora took a cautious step back, her eyes wide as it loomed above them. Its eyes, once filled with burning intensity, now seemed almost peaceful, calm in a way that made Zora feel both small and awestruck. Blake reached out, his hand extended toward the creature's massive head. Zora held her breath, unsure of what would happen next. The creature paused, its gaze fixed on Blake for a moment longer before it slowly lowered its head, allowing Blake's hand to touch its scaled surface. The contact was brief, but it was enough. It was a sign of trust, of alliance. "This is it," Blake said quietly, turning to Zora. "We have the creature of the canyon on our side. The balance is on our side." Zora's mind was still reeling from the encounter. The creature of the canyon, a being of ancient power, had chosen to join them. Together with the thorn beast and the other creatures Blake had befriended, they now had an army that could stand against the invaders. It was unbelievable, yet in this moment, Zora couldn't deny it. Blake had done what no one else had ever been able to do. He had united the creatures of this world to protect it. But there was still much to be done. The invaders were still coming, and they were ruthless. Zora knew that the fight ahead would be long and difficult, but now, for the first time, she felt a sense of hope. With Blake's leadership, with the creatures by their side, they had a chance to protect the planet and its natural balance. Blake turned to her, his face serious but filled with quiet determination. "We need to gather the others," he said. "There's no time to waste. The invaders will be here soon, and we need to be ready." Zora nodded, her resolve strengthening. "Let's do it," she said, her voice steady. "We won't let them take this world." As the creature of the canyon spread its wings and took to the sky, Zora felt a surge of hope flood through her. The path ahead would be dangerous, but with Blake and the creatures at her side, she was ready to fight for this world, ready to protect it from those who would seek to destroy it. The final battle for the planet had begun, and together they would stand strong against the darkness that threatened to consume everything.